Shabbat Shalom. I'm Cantor David Prozer of Kempsville Conservative Synagogue, Kehillat Bet HaMidrash in Virginia Beach, Virginia. And this is our Torah portion commentary for Saturday, December 12th, 2020, corresponding to the 26th day of the Hebrew month of Kislev, 5781. We thank Rabbi Joseph Prauser, Rabbi Joyce Newmark, Rabbi Matthew Berkowitz, and the United Synagogue Torah Spark series for their various teachings and publications on this week's Parsha. This Shabbat, December 12th, we read the Parsha of Vayeshev in the book of Bereshit, the book of Genesis. It begins on page 226 of the Eitz Chaim Chumash and page 141 of the Hertz. Since this Shabbat is also the second day of Hanukkah, we also read a maftir portion from a second Torah scroll. We read from the book of Bamidbar, the book of Numbers, and the Parsha is Naso. I'll give the chapter and pages when we get to it. After the relative insecurity and turbulence of Yaakov's life up to this point, Parshat Vayeshev opens with the hope of the patriarchs transitioning into a calmer stage of life. Yaakov and his family are now settled in Canaan, in Canaan. The Parsha begins with Yosef, Joseph, the older son of Yaakov's beloved wife Rachel, who is now 17 years old. Yaakov shows marked favoritism toward his son Yosef, provoking his other sons' bitter resentment. Yosef compounds their hatred for him with his habit of reporting unfavorably on them to his father, as does Yaakov when he presents Yosef with a coat of many colors. When Yosef described his dreams to his brothers, in which their sheaves of grain bow down to his, and with the sun, the moon, and 11 stars bowing down to him as well, he only makes matters worse. When Yaakov sends Yosef to check on his brothers who are pasturing flocks at Shechem, the brothers conspire to kill him. However, at Reuven's urging, they modify their plan, agreeing to throw Yosef into a pit instead. Reuven had intended to return to the pit later and rescue him. But before he can get back and help Yosef escape, the brothers modify their plan further. They sell him to a caravan of traders variously identified as Ishmaelites or Midianites, and the traders sell him into Egyptian slavery. To conceal their crime, the brothers dip Yosef's coat of many colors, the symbol of his favored status, in animal blood and show it to Yaakov as evidence of his beloved son's death. Yaakov mourns Yosef's violent end. A savage beast has devoured him. Meanwhile, in Egypt, Yosef is sold to Potiphar, Pharaoh's chief steward. At this point in the Parsha, the Yosef narrative is interrupted by the story of Judah and Tamar. Judah's son Er dies after displeasing God through an unspecified offense. As is the custom of the time, Judah instructs a second son, Onan, to enter into a levirate marriage with his widowed sister-in-law, Tamar. Under this arrangement, Onan's children by Tamar would be counted as Er's offspring. But Onan impedes conception of an heir for his brother, giving rise to the term Onanism. Onan also dies for his sin. As a note to Onan's death, commentators have specified that he died because he evaded his responsibility to his dead brother, not for his chosen method of birth control. Naturally, Judah procrastinates in arranging a union between Tamar and his next son, Shelah, possibly because Shelah was not old enough to marry, but more probably fearing for Shelah's life. After all, Tamar's track record with husbands is not one to be admired. Sometime later, Judah is widowed. He travels to Timnah, where Tamar contrives to meet him. Disguised as a prostitute and veiled to conceal her identity, Tamar arranges a liaison with her father-in-law, and Judah leaves a staff and a signet with her as promise of payment. Tamar, still disguised, disappears with Judah's collateral before being paid, and she conceives twins. When the pregnancy becomes apparent, Judah assumes that she has had an illicit affair and orders her killed. When she produces the staff and the signet, he understands that he had been duped into a levirate marriage of sorts. She is more religious than I, he declares. Peretz and Zerach are born of this union. The narrative returns to Egypt, where Yosef rises to a high position as major domo in Potiphar's household, earning his master's trust. Yosef repeatedly repels sexual advances by Mrs. Potiphar, who, to extract revenge, claims that Yosef had sexually assaulted her, showing a garment that she had seized from him as evidence. This claim is strikingly parallel to the false evidence used by Yosef's brothers to document his alleged death. Yosef is imprisoned by a furious Potiphar. Even in prison, Yosef is successful, earning the chief jailer's trust. In time, Pharaoh's cupbearer and baker are imprisoned. Each has a disturbing dream that Yosef interprets. He accurately foretells the cupbearer's restoration to office and the baker's execution, fates that unfold exactly as Yosef had foreseen and are meted out at a celebration of Pharaoh's birthday. Despite Yosef's pleas to the cupbearer for intervention and advocacy, once he is restored to his position, he forgets his promise to plead Yosef's case to Pharaoh. At this point, we go to our second Torah scroll for today's Maftir reading for Hanukkah. We find it in the book of Bamidbar, the book of Numbers, chapter 7, verses 18 to 29 in Parshat Naso. The reading begins on page 807 of the Eitz Chaim Chumash and page 597 of the Hertz. These Torah readings for Hanukkah match our 8-day celebration of the rededication of the temple in Jerusalem after the Maccabee victory to the days of inauguration and dedication of the Mishkan, the sanctuary in the wilderness, built by God's command to the Israelites through Moshe. The prince of each tribe of the Israelites brought the exact same set of gifts to the Mishkan, one prince per day for each of 12 days of dedication. This is the second day of Hanukkah, and the reading lists the gifts brought on the second and third days of the Mishkan's dedication. On the second day, the prince bringing the offering was Netanel ben Suar from the tribe of Yisachar. On the third day, the prince was Eliav ben Chelon from the tribe of Zebulun. Each prince's gift consisted of 1 silver bowl weighing 130 shekels, 1 silver basin weighing 70 shekels, both filled with choice flour mixed with oil for a grain offering, 1 gold ladle of 10 shekels filled with incense, 1 bull of the herd and 1 ram and 1 lamb in its first year for burnt offerings, 1 goat for a purification offering, 2 oxen, 5 rams, 5 he-goats, and 5 yearling lambs for a sacrifice of well-being. The Haftorah for this week, for the Shabbat of Hanukkah, is from the book of Zechariah, verses 2:14 through 4:7, beginning on page 1272 of the Eitz Chaim Chumash and page 987 of the Hertz. Zechariah was one of the exiles who returned from Babylon when Cyrus allowed Israelites to return in the year 537 BCE. He began his prophecy about 17 years later. Disastrous seasons and the hostility of neighbors had discouraged the people, and all work in connection with rebuilding the temple had ceased. This is where the prophet rouses the people from their despondency and assures them of divine assistance in their work of rebuilding the temple and the nation. His message is, "Not by might, nor by power, but by my Spirit, saith the Lord." This is the prophetic teaching of Hanukkah as we link these chapters with our annual anniversary of the rededication of the temple in Hasmonean times. Shabbat Shalom, good Shabbos. Please be sure to subscribe, to like, to hit the notification bell so you always know when we post new content, and please feel free to leave comments. Shabbat Shalom.